The classroom at Kepler-7 Military Academy was cold and gray. The walls showed nothing but the endless darkness of space beyond thick reinforced glass. Marcus Hayes sat in the third row, his human body small compared to the large Zorvathan commander standing before the class. Commander Krell was a massive being with silver skin that reflected the artificial light. His people had conquered space 3,000 years ago. His people had never lost a war. His people knew everything about survival in the galaxy. He stood before 27 cadets from 17 different species, and his eyes were hard and cruel. "Today we study what cannot be destroyed," Krell said. His voice was like metal scraping metal. "Today we study the Vex." The hologram activated. A machine appeared in the center of the classroom. It was shaped like nothing from nature. Sharp angles and dangerous edges covered every surface. The machine was dark gray and covered in dents and scars. These marks told the story of every time something had tried to kill it and failed. "The Vex was found in the Outer Rim 67 years ago," Krell continued. "It is an ancient defense system. We do not know who built it. We do not know when it was built. We know only that it destroys everything that attacks it." Marcus leaned forward. Next to him, Olivia Torres also watched the hologram with sharp eyes. They were the only two humans in the academy. Everyone else at Kepler-7 thought humans were too young and too wild to be real soldiers. But Olivia and Marcus knew better. 17 civilizations have tried to destroy the Vex, Krell said. The hologram changed, showing different weapons hitting the machine. Energy weapons that could burn through steel. Kinetic missiles that weighed thousands of tons. Biological weapons that could kill anything with cells. All 17 civilizations failed. The first attack came from the Zorvathans themselves. Their weapons were the most advanced in known space. They fired for 30 minutes. The Vex adapted its armor after the first 10 seconds. It learned from the energy weapons and became stronger. By the end of 30 minutes, the Vex was moving toward the Zorvathan forces. The second attack came from the Karath, a species with weapons that worked on gravity itself. They pulled at the Vex with forces that should have torn it apart. But the Vex was built to survive forces beyond any organic being's understanding. Its structure bent and twisted, but it did not break. The Kareth fell back. The third attack came from the Silent, a species that used weapons humans did not even have names for. These weapons changed the air itself into something deadly. The Vex's outer layer burned away, but its core stayed alive. The machine adapted again and again. 42 minutes, Krell said, pointing at the data. The Silent engaged the Vex for 42 minutes. In that time, the Vex learned to counter every weapon they fired. In that time, the Vex destroyed 73% of the Silent's battle fleet. The hologram showed attack after attack. Each species was more advanced than the last. Each species had better weapons and smarter generals. None of it mattered. The Vex defeated them all. "The Vex has never been destroyed," Krell said. His voice grew louder. "The Vex has never been damaged beyond repair. The Vex has never failed. No weapon can stop it. No tactic can defeat it. No strategy can overcome it." Marcus felt something cold move down his spine. This was the lesson. This was what they were supposed to learn. Humans learned to adapt and survive. But this machine was born to adapt and survive. Humans were weak next to something like that. 17 civilizations learned this truth, Krell continued. They learned that some things cannot be destroyed. Some things cannot be stopped. We do not fight the Vex. We do not attack the Vex. We contain the Vex. We observe the Vex. We learn from the Vex's existence. The hologram showed the containment facility on Kepler-7. It was a structure built into the station itself, surrounded by energy barriers and shield generators. The Vex sat in the center, silent and patient. It had been contained for 23 years now. It would be contained for another 1,000 years if necessary. Your assignment, Krell said, looking at the class, is to study the containment protocols used by the Council. You will write 3 pages explaining why we choose containment over destruction. You will explain why fighting is death. You will understand that acceptance of this fact is what keeps us alive. The class began to file out slowly. Most of the cadets looked shaken. A Trethian cadet with 4 arms spoke quietly to a Keldan soldier. They both nodded in agreement. The lesson had worked on them. They accepted the truth. Some things could not be stopped, but Marcus did not move. He sat in his seat and stared at the data still glowing on the holographic display. Olivia came back and sat next to him. "Do not," she whispered. "Do not what?" Marcus asked. "Do not think like a human. Think like a soldier. Accept the truth." Marcus turned to look at her. Olivia's dark eyes were serious, but he could see the doubt in them too. She wanted to believe what Krell said, but something inside her, something that came from being human, did not believe it. "Every weapon they used," Marcus said slowly, "hit the Vex from the outside. Every attack came from far away. Missiles and energy blasts and gravity weapons. So what?" Olivia said, but her voice did not sound sure. "So none of them attacked it the same way twice in a row. They all used different weapons, different strategies, different approaches. But they never kept attacking with the same thing long enough to see if the Vex's adaptation had a limit." Olivia looked at him for a long time. Then she glanced at the door to make sure no one else was listening. "That is why no one tried," she said. "Because the Vex would kill them before they found out. Because fighting it is death. Or because everyone believed what Krell just taught us," Marcus said. "And once you believe something cannot be done, you stop trying to do it." He stood up and left the classroom. Olivia followed him. Neither of them spoke. But Marcus knew she was thinking the same thing he was thinking. Humans did not come from a world that let them accept the impossible. Humans came from a world that made them challenge it. That night, both cadets headed to the Academy archives. They had research to do. They had forbidden ideas to explore. And somewhere deep inside, they knew that Commander Krell might be wrong. The archive room was empty at midnight. Marcus and Olivia worked in silence, pulling old documents from the physical storage units. The Academy kept paper records as backup because energy systems could fail. Many of the oldest records about the Vex existed only on paper. The first document was from the Zorvathan First Attack, dated 47 years in the past. The text described energy weapons fired at the Vex for exactly 10 minutes and 15 seconds before the Vex's armor changed. The metal became harder. The weapons stopped working. That was when the attack ended. Why did they stop? Marcus whispered Olivia was reading a separate account from the same battle. The Vex started moving toward them. They lost 70% of their battle group in those 30 minutes. Command ordered a retreat. Marcus checked the next records. The Karath attack lasted 38 minutes. The Silent attack lasted 42 minutes. The Kellian attack lasted 17 minutes. The Varth attack lasted 19 minutes. Each battle was different. Each species used different weapons. But none of them pushed past the point where the Vex started winning. "Look at this," Olivia said. She had found a research paper written by a Zorvathan scientist named Veltom. The paper discussed something others had missed. It said the Vex's adaptation time might not be infinite. It said the machine might need moments to shift its structure. It said if a species could attack fast enough, in ways too chaotic to predict, the Vex might not have time to adapt. "He was killed," Marcus read aloud. "The scientist was killed in an accident. No one ever followed his theory." Olivia looked at him. "They say accident. But maybe the military killed him because his ideas were dangerous. Maybe they were afraid someone would actually try what he suggested. Marcus felt cold. It was possible. Once the military decided something was impossible, they made sure no one tried to prove them wrong. They made sure no one even suggested it could be done. They kept searching. Hours passed. The archive became a map of failure. Every attack, every method, every strategy. But underneath all the failure, something else appeared. A pattern. The Vex needed time to adapt. Not much time. Maybe only a few seconds. But it needed that time. Every recorded attack gave the Vex what it needed. Energy weapons came in steady streams. The Vex could predict them. Missiles came in waves. The Vex could calculate their paths. Gravity weapons came from a single direction. The Vex could shift its center of mass on, but what if the weapons came in ways that had no pattern? What if the attacks changed direction every millisecond? What if the intensity shifted in unpredictable ways? What if the Vex could not predict anything because there was nothing to predict? That would be suicide, Olivia said. You could not control a weapon that chaotic. It would kill you before it killed the Vex. Maybe, Marcus said. But the Vex has never faced that kind of attack. All 17 civilizations attacked with control and precision. They attacked with weapons that followed patterns the Vex could learn. They found the old technical blueprints of the Kepler-7 station in a sealed container. The blueprints showed everything. The containment chamber had weak points. All structures had weak points. The Vex's armor was connected to its central processor through a junction point. The junction was not armor. It was designed for function, not protection. No one had ever attacked that junction, because conventional weapons could never reach it through all that armor. But a chaotic attack, coming from unpredictable angles and shifting patterns, might slip through the gaps. It might reach the junction before the Vex could reinforce the connection. We would need a weapon that does not exist, Olivia said. No, Marcus said. We would need a weapon no one has tried to build because everyone knows it should not work. He stood up and walked to the locked cabinet that held the Academy's advanced weapon designs. They were not supposed to touch it. The penalty for unauthorized access was expulsion. But Marcus used a code from a stolen security file. The cabinet opened. Inside were blueprints for weapons systems. Some were theoretical. Some were experimental. Some were forbidden because they were too dangerous or too unpredictable to control. Marcus found what he was looking for. It was a rapid-fire energy discharge system. The plan showed it could operate in bursts instead of continuous fire. It could change frequency. It could shift intensity. This, Marcus said, holding up the plans. But we would need to make it completely chaotic. No pattern. No way to predict the next shot. That would destroy the weapon as quickly as it destroyed anything else, Olivia said. Yes, Marcus agreed. One shot. Maybe two. That is all it would work for. Olivia stared at him. You are talking about building something that would kill the operator. I am talking about building something that might work against the Vex. There is no might, Olivia said. There is only death. Marcus set the plans on the table. Every human on Earth died. Every human in early civilizations faced things that seemed impossible. Predators that were faster. Environments that were more hostile. Diseases that killed in days. And humans did not accept those things as impossible. Humans found ways. That was different, Olivia said. But her voice wavered. How is it different? We are humans. We are cadets. We are in a classroom that tells us every day that some things cannot be done. And every time I hear that, something inside me says that is a lie. Something inside me says someone just has not tried hard enough yet. Olivia was quiet for a long time. Then she stood up and moved to the weapons cabinet. She pulled out additional papers, technical notes, schematics for energy modulation systems, notes on cascade feedback loops. Without speaking, she began to study them with Marcus. They worked through the night. When morning came, they had the beginnings of a plan. They could not tell anyone. They could not ask for help. They could not tell the instructors or the military council. They could only build something in secret and hope it would work. By the time the sun rose over the distant horizon, both cadets knew what they had to do. They also knew what it would cost them if they failed. But they were human, and humans did not let impossible things stay impossible. The forbidden idea had taken root. Neither of them could stop thinking about it now. Neither of them wanted to. The alarm started at 14:32 station time. It was a sound designed to get everyone's attention. A low wail that made teeth hurt and made the air feel heavy. Marcus was in the academy library when he heard it. Olivia was in weapons training. They both looked up at the same moment, knowing without any communication that something terrible was happening. The announcement came through the speakers. Containment alert. Containment alert. The Vex containment field has experienced a cascade malfunction in Sector 7. All personnel must report to emergency stations. This is not a drill. The library emptied in seconds. Marcus stood alone between the shelves, his heart beating too fast. The only thing in the universe that mattered was contained directly below the academy. And the thing that contained it was failing. He ran to the observation deck. Every screen showed the same image. The containment chamber glowed with red warning lights. The energy barrier that surrounded the Vex flickered and weakened. Inside the chamber, the machine stirred. It had been sleeping for 23 years. Now it was waking up. Military ships moved into position around the station. The Zorvathan Command Center issued orders. The barrier was holding at 84% integrity. All weapons systems came online. Soldiers who had trained for this day but never believed it would come move to their stations. Marcus pushed through the crowd of cadets trying to see what was happening. No one stopped him. Everyone was too focused on the disaster unfolding below. He reached a restricted observation chamber that was supposed to be locked. The lock was broken. Someone had already been here. Inside, Olivia stood with her hands on the glass, staring down at the Vex as it moved in its chamber. "It is happening," she whispered. "Yes," Marcus said. The barrier dropped to 78%. Then 75%. The Vex moved with purpose now. It had been dormant for so long that it took time for its systems to fully activate. But they were activating. Every second, it became faster and stronger. Every second, the barrier became weaker. Below them, in the main command center, Commander Krell stood rigid as data scrolled across his screens. He had studied containment failures in theory. He had never expected to see one happen in reality. The calculations were simple. The Vex would break free in approximately 2 hours. The barrier could not hold longer than that. The evacuation order came 52 minutes after the alarm started. All non-military personnel would board transport ships. All Academy cadets would move to Sector 10, the far side of the station. Everyone else had 12 minutes to gather what they could carry and leave. The corridors filled with panic. Species that normally ignored each other pushed past each other toward the docking bays. Teachers tried to organize cadets into groups. Officers tried to enforce order. But chaos had a way of breaking all rules. Marcus and Olivia stayed in the observation chamber. They watched the barrier drop to 40%. Then 35%. The Vex was different now. It was angrier. It was hungrier. It had not destroyed anything in so long that something primal drove it to break free. "Do you have it?" Olivia asked quietly. Marcus touched his chest. Beneath his uniform, wrapped carefully in insulated material, was the weapon they had built in secret. It was small and light. It was unstable and dangerous. It was probably useless. But it existed. Yes, Marcus said. Then, this is when we decide, Olivia said. Now or never. Now, or we accept what Krell taught us and we live. Marcus looked at the Vex moving in its failing containment. He thought about all the civilizations that had fought it. He thought about all the soldiers who had died trying. He thought about the Forbidden's research papers locked away in archives. He thought about every moment of his life when someone had told him something was impossible. I have to try, Marcus said. I know, Olivia said. I knew you would say that. I knew from the first night in the archives. You are human. Humans do not accept impossible. She turned and looked at him. Her eyes were serious and sad. When you do this, she said, the Vex will kill you. There is no survival in what you are planning. You know that, right? You understand that? Yes, Marcus said. I understand. Then I will not stop you, Olivia said. But I need to tell someone what you are trying. If you fail, the galaxy needs to know why you did this. The galaxy needs to know humans tried. Marcus nodded. That was enough. That was everything he needed. The barrier dropped below 20%. Red alarms flashed everywhere now. The command center issued new orders. All civilian evacuation was complete. All military would fall back to secondary defense positions. When the Vex broke containment, the defense perimeter would form around it. They would contain it again. They would study what had changed. They would adapt their methods. It was the plan that every species had accepted. It was the plan that guaranteed survival. But at exactly 1639 station time, a critical failure occurred in Sector 7. The automatic backup systems for monitoring the containment field went down for maintenance. For the first time in the breach, there was no one watching that section of the station. For the first time, there was a path directly from the Academy to the containment chamber. It lasted only 90 seconds. Then the systems came back online. But 90 seconds was enough time for a human to run. Marcus moved without thinking anymore. He ran through the corridors toward the containment chamber. Olivia had already reached the communications station. She was recording everything. She was documenting what Marcus was going to do. Behind him, Marcus heard the sound of military boots. Security was responding to movement in restricted areas. But they were too slow. Humans moved with an urgency that other species did not understand. Humans moved like animals that had survived on a world that wanted to kill them. Marcus reached the containment chamber entrance. He used the stolen security codes. The door opened. Below him was a massive space filled with energy barriers and weapon systems. And in the center, moving with terrible purpose, was the Vex. It had never seen a human this close. It had never fought a human. Its adaptive systems had learned to counter the weapons of 17 advanced civilizations. It had no idea what was about to happen. Marcus descended the platform stairs toward the containment chamber floor. The Vex was 30 meters away. It turned toward him with mechanical precision. Its sensors detected the human form descending toward it. Its weapon systems came online. After 23 years of silence, the Vex was ready to destroy something again. Marcus pulled the weapon from beneath his uniform. It was smaller than any serious military weapon should be. It looked almost fragile in his hands. The Vex would see it and would know how to counter it. Everything else had tried to use force against the Vex. Force had always failed. The distance between Marcus and the Vex closed. 25 meters. 20 meters. 15 meters. The human cadet's hands were steady. His breathing was calm. Inside his mind, everything was chaos. Inside his body, every system screamed at him to run. But humans were built to fight when running was impossible. The Vex raised its primary weapon arm. Energy crackled along its length. This was the same weapon that had destroyed countless warships. This was the weapon that had ended the Silent's attempt to destroy it. This was what was going to end Marcus Hayes. Marcus raised his weapon. He aimed at the junction point where the armor connected to the core processor, the point that 17 advanced civilizations had never managed to hit because their weapons were too powerful and too predictable to slip through the gaps. Marcus fired. The cascade discharge erupted from the weapon's barrel in stuttering bursts of pure energy. Each shot lasted less than a millisecond. Each shot fired at a different frequency. Each shot shifted in intensity and angle and path. There was no pattern. There was no rhythm. There was no way for the Vex to predict what was coming next because the attacks made no logical sense. The Vex's armor began to shift and harden. Its adaptive systems went to work immediately. The machine sensed energy weapons being used and began to restructure its surface layers to resist energy weapons. But the surface changed again. The Vex shifted to resist kinetic force. Then it shifted again to resist radiation. Then it shifted again to counter something that was not quite like any previous attack. The cascade weapon continued firing. 12 bursts per second. Each burst different from the last. Each burst designed to slip through the defenses rather than blast through them. The junction point flickered with energy as the weapon found its target. Pain exploded through Marcus's hands. The weapon was overheating. The design had never meant for this level of continuous discharge. The energy that powered the weapon had to go somewhere, and it was burning through the handle and into his hands. His fingers felt like they were on fire. The skin blackened. The nerve endings screamed at him to drop the weapon and stop the pain. But Marcus did not stop. He could not stop. The Vex was still moving. The junction point was still intact. The machine had survived 17 civilizations. It could survive this. Then something changed. The Vex's movement slowed. Not much, only by a few percent. But it was the first time in the entire battle that the machine had moved slower than before. The cascade weapon continued. Burst after burst. Frequency after frequency. The Vex's adaptive systems were working overtime, but they were designed for organized attacks, not chaos. The junctions began to crack. The armor that had never been damaged was now taking real damage. The Vex's primary arm drooped slightly. It was still trying to target Marcus. Its weapons still wanted to fire, but something inside its structure was failing. Marcus's hands were ruined now. The tissue was burned away almost to the bone. His fingers would not move in any normal way ever again. But he kept firing. His left hand held the weapon. His right hand held the trigger. Every second took his life away and poured it into destroying something that everyone said could not be. Destroyed. The Vex took a step backward. It was the first retreat the machine had made against any attacker. It was a movement born of damage and system failures. For the first time, something was breaking faster than the Vex could repair it. Then the weapon reached critical failure. The energy cascade became too much. The power systems at the weapon's core could not handle anymore. Physics took over. The weapon exploded. The blast threw Marcus backward across the containment chamber floor. He crashed into the wall hard enough to break ribs. His lungs filled with pain. He could not breathe. He could not see. He could not feel anything except burning and breaking. But the weapon was silent now. The Vex did not move. For the first time in recorded history, the Vex had stopped attacking. One of its legs was severed at the joint, blown cleanly away by the cascade explosion. Its armor was scarred with patterns and burns that covered almost every surface. Its primary weapon arm hung useless at its side. Its secondary system sparked with internal damage. The containment chamber fell silent, except for the sound of alarms and the mechanical Clicking of the VEX is damaged. Systems trying to function. Then the alarms changed. The barrier integrity began to rise. The military outside had regained control of the situation. With the VEX stopped, the evacuation protocols no longer mattered. The danger was passing. Everything would be fine now, but Marcus could not care about that. He lay on the cold floor with his hands burned and his ribs broken and his vision fading. He had done what 17 civilizations could not do. He had stopped the VEX. It was not dead. It was not destroyed. But it was stopped. The soldiers came through the doors seconds later. They moved Marcus onto a stasis platform. Medical equipment surrounded him. A Zorvathan doctor was shouting orders in their own language. A Kareth technician was scanning his body for critical damage. As consciousness faded, Marcus heard one clear message from a medical readout. Cadet Marcus Hayes is alive. Injuries are severe but survivable. Transport to medical facility in 3 minutes. He had survived. He had done the impossible. And somewhere in the galaxy, everything had just changed. Because 17 civilizations had accepted that some things could not be done. But one human had refused. And that refusal had changed everything. 3 months later, Marcus Hayes stood in the main auditorium of the Academy. His hands were wrapped in biotech gloves that covered severe burn scars. The gloves were made from material that could stimulate nerve growth and muscle development. The doctors said that with time and therapy, his hands might work at 50% capacity. It was not much, but 50% was better than nothing. 50% was better than the death that should have come. The auditorium was full. Military officers from every major species were present. Researchers who had studied the VEX for decades sat in the audience. Academy officials who had never thought this day would come stood along the walls. And there, in the center front row, was Commander Krell. The Zorvathan commander looked older than he had 3 months ago. His silver skin seemed less bright. His posture seemed less certain. He had been wrong. He had taught that some things could not be done. And a cadet had proved him wrong. Marcus looked out at the crowd. Somewhere in the audience was Olivia. She had recorded everything. She had contacted the military council. She had told them what Marcus was planning. She had given him the chance to try. Without Olivia, none of this would have been possible. But she had made a choice to help even when she knew it might mean death. That was the most human thing Marcus had ever seen. A council representative stepped forward. She was a Melian, a species known for their wisdom and careful thought. She had traveled to the Academy specifically for this announcement. Cadet Marcus Hayes, the Melian said, you violated numerous protocols. You built an unauthorized weapon. You used stolen security codes. You disobeyed direct orders to evacuate. You entered a restricted area without permission. You did everything that military law says should result in your expulsion and imprisonment. Marcus said nothing. He had accepted this months ago. The trial had happened in military court. The punishment could have been severe, but the council had delayed any sentence. They wanted to understand what had happened first. However, the Melian continued, you also accomplished what 17 advanced civilizations could not accomplish. You stopped the VEX. You did what we believed was impossible. The auditorium was completely silent now. Thousands of beings from dozens of species waited to hear what would happen next. The VEX is no longer a weapon to be feared, the Melian said. Our scientists have deactivated it. They discovered that your Cascade weapon created a feedback loop in its adaptive processor. The machine's primary function was to learn and counter any attack method. But your weapon was not an attack in the traditional sense. It was chaos. It was unpredictable. It was something the VEX could not learn from quickly enough to survive. A hologram activated behind the Melian. It showed the VEX in detail. The machine was still, no longer dangerous. Scientists were examining its structure and systems. The Vex was being studied instead of feared. "We are increasing your rank from cadet to junior officer," the Melian said. "We are offering you a position in the Academy's new research division. And we are formally announcing that the Galactic Military Academy's doctrine is changing, effective immediately." The auditorium erupted. Beings from different species spoke to each other in different languages. The news spread through the crowd like fire. The impossible had happened. Something everyone believed was true had been proven false. Commander Krell stood slowly. He walked forward toward Marcus. His movements were stiff and slow. An old being who had lived 3,000 years and never thought he would need to change his mind about anything. "I was wrong," Krell said. His voice was quiet but strong enough for everyone to hear. "I taught you to accept limitation. I taught you that acceptance of limitation is what keeps soldiers alive. But you have shown me that acceptance of limitation is itself a choice. And that choice can be questioned." The commander's eyes were different now. They were not cruel anymore. They were tired and sad and something else. Understanding, maybe. Or regret. "Humans," Krell continued, "come from a world that teaches you that impossible is not a destination. It is merely a starting point. Your species survived on Earth by refusing to accept that anything could not be overcome. You adapted. You innovated. You found new ways when old ways failed." He paused. The entire auditorium waited. "I believed we had learned everything there was to learn about warfare and survival," Krell said. "I believed that advanced age and advanced technology made us superior. But you have taught us that there is something more valuable than superiority. There is the willingness to try. There is the refusal to give up." Commander Krell extended his hand toward Marcus. It was a gesture of respect among Zorvithans. It meant acceptance and acknowledgement of equality. Marcus took the commander's hand. The auditorium erupted again. But this time, it was not chaos. It was celebration. Scientists began shouting research proposals. Military officers began taking notes on new strategies. Teachers began thinking about how to teach this lesson to future cadets. Later that evening, Marcus worked in the Academy's research laboratory. A new team had been formed to study unconventional weapon design. They included engineers from 6 different species. A Kareth, who specialized in gravity systems. A Kellian, who understood biological adaptation. A silent researcher who had worked with energy manipulation for 1,000 years. And 3 humans, including Marcus. Olivia was there too. She had been offered a position as a military liaison, translating human thinking for non-human researchers. She sat across a table from Marcus, reviewing designs for new weapons concepts. "They want us to teach other civilizations how humans think," Olivia said. "They want us to show them how to approach problems the human way." "Which way is that?" Marcus asked. Olivia smiled. "We refuse to believe that anything is impossible. We find new paths when old ones are blocked. We try things that do not make sense until they do. We break the rules because the rules told us we should fail." Marcus looked down at his hands inside the biotech gloves. They would heal enough. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough to work. Enough to build. Enough to try. Below the research laboratory, in a sealed containment chamber, the Vex remained still and silent. The ancient defense system that had never been defeated was now powerless. Not destroyed, not killed, but stopped, made harmless. No longer impossible. Outside the observation window, the stars of the galaxy shone with new possibilities. In distant research facilities, scientists were studying the Cascade weapon design. In military academies across known space, teachers were beginning to rewrite their lessons about what could and could not be done. And somewhere in the galaxy, Another impossible problem was waiting. Another situation where current thinking had declared something must fail. And soon, a human would arrive. A human would look at that problem and say the words that older civilizations had forgotten. How to say dot the human would say, "Let me try." And the galaxy would never be the same.